Thank you. Mr. Doggett, you recognize strike the last word.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Earlier this month, on an amendment that I offered, the committee voted for a second time along party lines to continue covering up President Trump's tax returns. And it's apparent from the comments that are being made today that this will be the third time. I think the committee has clearly struck out on this issue. Every president, with rare exception, for years, for decades, has provided this information. And while we have a fundamental disagreement about what these tax returns might show and why they should be shown to the American people, I think one thing we should be able to agree on unanimously: we have never in the history of this country had a president quite like President Trump. Mr. Chairman, I would say that the cover-up eventually will be uncovered, and it is just a question of how long this process goes on. I hope it will end sooner rather than later. There's some question whether any committee other than this one has the authority legally to obtain these tax returns. I believe there is a serious national security issue here. The House investigation has been totally discredited within the last week, but whether it was discredited or not, this committee has a role to play with reference to tax returns. And when you have the president's son-in-law talking with a former KGB official running a bank in Russia, and you have an indication from the president's son a few years back that the Russians make up a pretty disproportionate cross-section of a lot of our assets, and that's a direct quote, there is reason to want to know whether there is anything in these tax returns showing payments to Russians or payments from Russians. It may be that not every bit of the information that we are seeking is contained within the form on individual taxes that President Trump may have filed. But there may well be an indication in those returns of information that will lead to that information. And that's why I believe the president went back on his promise to the American people and refused to disclose the very information he said he would disclose in the future when these audits were concluded. I want to know whether he has, as his son said, continued to have a pretty disproportionate cross-section of a lot of their assets with the Russians. It is difficult to understand why the president, as a candidate and now as a president of the United States, has been so quiet about the outrageous conduct of the Putin administration. The contacts between President Trump and his associates and Putin's gang are rampant, and we find out more about them with each passing week. But in addition to the national security concerns, which are very real, I want to emphasize that the chairman and the members of this committee are misconstruing Section 6103, narrowly construing it really to justify this cover-up of the Trump tax returns, and that this committee has a significant interest in these returns as it relates to the administration of our business, both with reference to our trade agenda, from which we heard about earlier today, given the large number of trademarks that President Trump was able to magically get approved from the Chinese earlier this year, and with reference to our tax responsibilities. After all, this is a gentleman who has bragged during the course of his campaign about his ability to manipulate members of the Congress and to get pretty much whatever he wants in the tax code. I know our complex tax laws better than anyone, President Trump said, anyone who's ever run for president, and I'm the only one who can fix them. The question is whether he's going to fix them for himself or fix them for the American people. And without those tax returns to know what conflicts may exist for him, what kind of self-dealing may exist for him, we will never know. Section 6103 deals with more than tax administration. It deals with the assessment, collection, enforcement, publication, and statistical gathering functions under the laws and statutes. There is every reason why, in terms of its work in tax and the fact that we are considering major tax legislation, that we would want to know that whether he will benefit personally, and that's why he is advancing these various legislative changes. Thank you.
The gentleman's time has expired.